Rev up your engines!
Well, they're having a heck of a time selling those electric Mach-E Mustangs, right? Now they're discounting it so much, you get the fancy Mach-E for $13,000 less. It's a big price cut, right? The Mustang EGT, their fast one, the price drops from $60,000 to $47,000 with the incentives and with rebates from Ford. People aren't buying these things. They're still trying to shove it down Americans' throats. People aren't buying these things. Okay, I've driven these Mustang Mach-E's, right? They're not nothing to do with a Mustang. They're an electric SUV. They're not like a performance Mustang. Yeah, they got a fast takeoff, but they don't handle all that well. They're made in Mexico. You get in them, they even feel cheap. Realize the original Mustangs were really cheap discount cars. They were based on a Ford Falcon chassis. They were cheap little things too, so maybe that's history, you know? But at least they were made in the United States. They weren't made in Mexico, right? They have to keep cutting the prices because people aren't buying these things. They're all going to have a problem with this in the near future. People just aren't going to buy the things. They're too expensive, right? And then they always say, as time goes on, we'll make them cheaper. They actually can't make them that much cheaper. They're already making them as cheap as they can in Mexico, right? If you know anything about electric cars, they got big old batteries. Well, they also have tiny 12-volt batteries to run a lot of systems to turn them on. Then the computers and everything see it's okay, and then they turn on the big battery and run them, right? They can't make these things much cheaper because they have to have all the safety stuff built in. It's bad enough already that they're burning up, they're blowing up and stuff. I had an electrical engineer come over the other day, and when they were starting this up, he said to me, he said, Scotty, when they were starting, he said, these people realize the energy density in these giant batteries to make a vehicle go this fast. He's an engineer, electrical engineer, right? He says, there's so much energy. These things are so dangerous. They got so much power in there, they can start on fire, they can blow up, right? They can't make them cheaper, because if they do, they would be even less safe than they are today. They have to have all these redundant features so the electricity doesn't short out. And they start making them cheaper, then they'll really have problems up the wazoo. So they're cutting their prices, but they have to, because nobody's buying the stupid things. Go to a Ford dealer and look at a fancy F-150. I just had a guy look at one. They wanted $93,000 for a fancy F-150 pickup truck, right? So what did he do? He ended up buying a used Dodge loaded one, and yeah, it had 90,000 miles, but he only paid $25,000. He didn't pay $93,000, right? They're not discounting the F-150s that are gasoline and diesel, but they're discounting these electric ones because nobody's buying them. Alvin Terry Kirksley says, my 2012 F-150 randomly shuts off while I'm driving. I took it to the shop, they changed the fuel pump, but didn't fix it. Then they said, we're 100% sure it's the BCM, but that didn't fix it either. Numero uno, you're going to the wrong mechanic. The guy's an idiot. He replaced your fuel pump. He should have pressure tested your fuel pump. He should have volume tested your fuel pump. He should have hooked up a freeze frame oscilloscope to the wiring to the fuel pump to see if the fuel pump armature was wearing out. We real mechanics can analyze all this stuff. We don't just guess with the part, right? Then he guessed with the BCM. That didn't fix it. What you need, this guy like me, you got to find a good mechanic. I know they're hard to find, like finding hen's teeth, right? But good mechanics will hook up a fancy scan tool and they'll drive it until it dies. When it dies, all that information is back recorded by our fancy scan tool. We look at the data and we can tell you what went wrong. We can analyze. All of a sudden it'll say, maybe crankshaft position sensor data went bad. Then you know either the crankshaft position sensor is bad, the wiring going to the crankshaft position sensor is bad, or the main computer is bad. Then we have to test it all. We don't just guess, you know? Like some guy said, well, maybe it's a crankshaft position sensor. You buy one and put it in. Maybe that'll fix it, maybe it won't, right? At least if you know that is the area that's a problem, then a real mechanic, they'll start checking the wiring, they'll check the sensor, they'll check the computer circuits and see what's gone wrong. You're going to have to find a guy like that. Otherwise, you're just going to be guessing. And as you found, it's like pissing in the wind. Your money's down the toilet and your truck isn't fixed. I would demand money back from that other guy, though. He didn't fix anything. He was just guessing. He guessed wrong, so I demand my money back. Scotty Demand 2023 says, my car feels like a misfire but has no code. Got no 05 Pontiac G6. I picked it up for $450. At idle, it runs smooth, but often it feels like a misfire, but there aren't any codes. What could it be? Your computer will only trip a misfire code when it goes really bad. It's got to be more than 20% good or bad, plus or minus. It's got to be that much off. You will feel it before the computer will. right? You only paid $450 for the car. What you basically want to start out with is change the spark plugs, the air filter, the fuel filter, put some fuel cleaner in the tank, drive it, and see if that helps. Could be a simple thing, worn out spark plug, something like that, right? Now, if it really is something wearing out within a short period of time, it will trip a code, right? You're saying there aren't any codes. By that, do you mean the check engine light doesn't come on? Because somebody might have taken the bulb out. Make sure you plug a scan tool in, because I've seen so many people take the bulbs out or pop the LEDs at the check engine light. The light never comes on, but there's all kinds of codes stored. So do get a good scan tool to check it first. It could be somebody just disconnected the light bulb, and now it's not giving you any codes when they're actually hidden in there. But if it doesn't have any codes, do what I said, and if that doesn't fix it, just drive it a while. Because if it gets worse, it will eventually trip a code. It might be something like P0301, meaning number 1 is misfiring, then you pray it's the ignition coil in number 1. And not the engine starting to go out, which, of course, if your number 1 piston is worn out and the rings are worn out, it would trip the same code. Lots of things can do it in a $450 car. Don't say I didn't say so, but I did. San Francisco has now canceled the license for crews to operate their self-driving taxis in San Francisco. Now, allegedly, this is because they withheld video footage of an accident that occurred with one of the robo-taxis. And here's what the California Department of Motor Vehicles said, and I quote, "When there is an unreasonable risk to public safety, the DMV can immediately suspend or revoke permits." And that's what they did. This came after one of the cruisers hit a pedestrian on the street. As I say, the cruise vehicle hit the woman, it braked, but then it continued to drive over, and it finally stopped on top of the woman. Now the woman survived, but she has life-threatening injuries. Now originally they got a permit for 300 driverless robotaxis, but then that was cut in half. In August, one of its cruise robotaxis crashed into a fire truck. So let's just say these things are not perfected. Right? And there's a small amount of them out there now. This is only with 150 of them rolling around. Imagine if there were millions of them. What a cluster mess that would be, right? So people, you've thrown a lot of money into this driving robo stuff. Maybe it's time to say, let's just forget the whole thing. Do we really need it? Well, here's some real information on the Cybertruck. A federal document reveals that the Tesla Cybertruck won't be cheap and it'll also be heavy. Now, old Elon's hiding all the information, but realize one thing. They're driven on a road, so they have to have VIN numbers, right? Well, guess what? The VIN numbers give all kinds of information. So, by looking at the document that was posted online by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, right, shows the VIN number. And the VIN number shows one thing. They're only going to be selling the all-wheel drive one, not the two-wheel drive one, so that's going to be the super expensive one, as per usual, or they're doing this crap. That's a new vehicle. Well, you can't buy our basic model because we're not making them yet. You got to buy the high-end model, right? So, it's going to be a heck of a lot more expensive than his original price. You're only going to be able to buy the fancy one, right? And going by the VIN number, you can have the vehicle gross weight too. So it's going to be at least 2,000 pounds heavier than a regular F-150 pickup truck, which is no lightweight to begin with, right? So it's going to be a real heavy vehicle. Electric heavy vehicles, they're not going to go as far. Look at the Ford Lightning electric pickup truck. It is also a very heavy electric truck. And it does not go far when it tows stuff. It's not what truck guys want. Now, of course, the Cybertruck's a completely different thing. It's a fantasy truck. There's going to be a bunch of loonies buying them because they want to ride around in this futuristic-looking robot truck, right? They're not real truck guys. They're not going to be pulling all kinds of work stuff going all over the place, right? They're going to be kind of show trucks as far as I'm concerned. F-150's an actual work truck, right? That's why the F-150 Lightning, the electric Ford pickup truck, is a dramatic failure. They're having a heck of a time selling them now. Nobody wants them. Real truck guys don't want them. Now, real truck guys, they probably don't want a Cybertruck, so it doesn't affect them. They're going to get a bunch of electrified loonies that want to get the, oh, look at that space age truck I got, blah, 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 right? So they'll sell anyways. It doesn't matter the price. Rich people buy Teslas. Every time I go to a rich part of the country, I see Teslas. When I was in Nashville, I saw a ton of them. When I was in Newport, Rhode Island, with the Vanderbilts and the Astors used to vacation, right? I see Teslas all the time, right? So we're not talking about rednecks driving pickups. We're talking about rich people. So they'll probably sell the things, but they're going to be a lot more expensive than you thought because they're only going to sell the fancy ones, and they're going to be heavy as can be, which is not boding well for an electric vehicle when you want range. The more they weigh, the less they can go. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.